to Jonathan Taylor. Huge hole. He's at the 30. He's going to go. 10, 5, touchdown. Jonathan Taylor made a man miss the line of scrimmage and then runs it into Pater for a one-handed INT. Are you kidding me? Kenny Moore.
What a play by Nyheim Hines.
Horseshoe is back, baby. The horseshoe is back.
What's going on, Colts Nation? Welcome back to another episode of the Bring the Juice Colts podcast. I'm your host, Derek Larger. Joining me today, Marcus, a.k.a. Culture Shock. If you all haven't already seen him, I'm sure you have. Make sure to go check out his channel, Culture Shock, on YouTube. Thank you for joining me, my man.
Hey, man, no problem. Appreciate the invite. Let's go ahead and talk some Colts.
All right, let's do it. Well, I mean, we kind of did this a few times over the offseason. We did it a few times last year, but, you know, now that the draft is over and we kind of understand the roster at this point, it's time to talk about some breakout candidates. You know, we've been talking back and forth about who's getting it negatively impacted and positively impacted from free agency draft. Let's put it all together here. So you and I were talking about our lists, and you had some pretty interesting ones. I got a couple that I think people are going to start scratching their heads at the end. So it's all good, though. But who is your first player who's going to have a breakout year?
For me, it's going to be Mo Alie-Cox. Now, of course, Mo Alie-Cox is, you know, one of the question marks. Nobody really knows how he's going to be used next year. We know we're going to have the running game working. We got a bunch of, you know, wide receiver threats. And I think Mo Alie-Cox, since the quarterback we have now is Carson Wentz that loves his tight ends, I feel like he can explode throughout the year and be that one of those guys. You know, Mo Alie-Cox is tall, versatile, he can block, and I feel like he can really improve throughout the season as well. That's why I have him as number one on my list.
Gotcha. Yeah, and it intrigues me too because, you know, he was such a good red zone threat as well last year with Phillip Rivers. I could only imagine that Carson Wentz would probably use him quite often as well, given, like you said, just a big, strong tight end. And I'll go with one of my guys here, and it's actually another tight end, and it's the one that we drafted, and that's Kylen Granson. I know people are like, well, Derek, he's a rookie, and he's going to probably be the third tight end. Yeah, but, I mean, ultimately, I like what Kylen Granson's game brings to the offense because, like you said, Carson Wentz really enjoys throwing to the tight ends. And if I'm going to be completely honest, even though Kylen has not touched the field yet, I think will probably be the best middle of the field tight end for us because that's his game. Yards after catch, making the play, doing that sort of thing, which opens up the offense in the middle of the field, and then using Mo Alie-Cox in the red zone more. I think that's ultimately how they're going to do it. So I think, like you said, both of these tight ends right here really can have breakout years. Just all depends on how much Carson Wentz throws on the ball. All right, so you have Mo Alie-Cox. Why don't you go ahead and go with your second person?
The number two one, it might shock people, but just hear me out. Number two for me is Jonathan Taylor. Now, of course, some people may question that and wonder why. But if you actually look at the season last year, I wouldn't really count that as a breakout year. Of course, he exploded towards the end, but I think if he can consistently do what he did at the end of the year throughout the whole season, I will call that a breakout year for Jonathan Taylor. Of course, he finished in maybe top 5 in running backs last year, but he can do that again. But if he maintains that rhythm and do that throughout the whole season, he might finish top 3. And that's why I put him as number 2 as my breakout player prediction.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, the first half of the season, he really didn't do a whole lot. He had a really good game against Minnesota, but outside of that, you know, there were even games he was getting benched. Like, that's how bad he was to start the year and in some games. So you're right, kind of having the chance to put it all together, having an off season where you have everyone together and learning all at once, it really will help, I'm sure. Okay, so my second person, and I think everyone can kind of agree with this or has been saying the same thing, and that's Paris Campbell. I really like Paris Campbell. Everyone knows this. I'm an Ohio State guy. Love me, my Ohio State boys. And, you know, just had so many injuries. And I think that this offseason, he's really back to being exactly what he wants to be. And we've seen him and Wentz going to even the rookie OTAs and practices, making sure they're getting extra reps, getting help and learning from and helping these guys. So I think he's invested, he's all in. And as long as his injuries don't get in the way, I really do anticipate this guy being, honestly, I said it before that he could be one of those over 1,000 yardage kind of guys throughout the year, kind of that gadget player, if you will. I definitely still agree to that as long as he doesn't get hurt. I mean, he could be our next Djax. I'm not even going to lie. All right. Your number 3. Go ahead.
My number 3 will be Julian Blackmon. Julian Blackmon came on the scene pretty early, due to injuries and everything. So he had to come in the game, but I think he filled the role at the time of need. I think he filled it in very well. Now, of course, he wasn't the best out there, but I think for his production of what he did, definitely boosted that defense somewhat, especially if you bring up that Minnesota game or certain games like that where he caught the pick, maybe even the Bengals game. He was a very pivotal piece in these moments. And of course, he has a nice duo with him with Kari Willis back there. These two could be a nice tandem going into next season. But I think high production from Julian Blackmon can definitely be one of those guys that have a breakout year next season.
Yeah, I mean, we remember the first couple weeks of the season. I mean, he was having game-saving turnover after turnover after turnover. I think there were at least 3 times that last season where he had a turnover that won the Colts the game at the end of the game. He said at the end of the year that, his legs were kind of getting slow and heavy, and it was obviously affecting how he was able to tackle, how he's able to be able to cover people. Do you have concerns about that going forward, or do you think the offseason is going to help?
Oh, yeah, I definitely think offseason is going to help for sure. Of course, he's still trying to recuperate. He got hurt before he got drafted. So I think it's all in a part of the game. It's a different type of speed from college football to the NFL. So I think he's going to be well adjusted going into next season. Of course, it worries me to death, but I think we got good depth pieces for backup roles for Julian Blackmon, but I still think he can produce well. He still has things to improve as well, but I definitely have faith in him.
Yeah, I get you totally on that. All right, so my third guy, and I certainly hope this is correct, and that's Rock Ya-Sin. Rock Ya-Sin needs to have this breakout year really to keep his spot. I mean, it's starting to kind of hit that part on the clock where we're starting to say, well, your time's starting to run out here, Rock. We gave you the first year benefit of the doubt, rookie. You showed some flashes in the second half of the year, and then last year started out really well, but then started getting targeted a lot. And, we saw the constant turnover with the penalties and giving up scores. It was obvious he was the weakest link in that secondary. I mean, I don't think it could get much worse for Rock Ya-Sin, honestly. So I think that kind of helps the argument of if he does any better this next year, then it's a breakout year for him because, he's starting to fall on this depth chart where Isaiah Rodgers is even potentially going to take his spot. So, second round pick, we got to see what happens with him, but I certainly hope he does more this next year. But okay, your fourth guy who you think is going to have a breakout year?
It's going to be Michael Pittman Jr., fan favorite of the Indianapolis Colts. Everybody loves him. We've seen the production of what he could do, even with Phillip Rivers, but I think he has a new gunslinger now at quarterback. It can definitely get him the football. He can pretty much play any position on the offense, whether slide outside, inside. He's pretty much that much of a threat. And I think he can be a high product going into next year with the role he may play. I feel like he can definitely have a breakout season with all these threats on the offense. Who are you going to guard? Now, we talked about Paris Campbell earlier, but I think if Paris Campbell explodes, it leaves the field open for Michael Pittman Jr. So I think I'm going to use him as another person to have a potential breakout season going in next year.
And I'm going to agree with you. When it came to last year, I was really shocked and surprised at how efficient he was going across the middle of the field. I know we've seen the highlights at USC of him catching the jump ball and making guys look silly going over the top of him, which is exactly what Carson Wentz likes to do. Carson Wentz is a gunslinger, loves to throw that ball 60 yards down the field, let the tallest man go and catch it, and that's usually going to be Michael Pittman. So that is also a great thing with being 6'4", 6'5". But then, what we saw from last year when he got confident and being able to run after the catch and outrun the linebackers that he would get across the middle of the field, that was really great to see. And, when if you have Michael Pittman and Paris Campbell doing double crosses across the middle of the field, oh my gosh, for zone defenses, that's going to be a nightmare. That's going to be such a nightmare to have to deal with. So I'm really excited what I see in Michael Pittman is just like I am in Paris Campbell. All right, your number 5 guy.
My number 5 is going to be Bobby Okereke. Big shoes to fill for Bobby Okereke. I mean, of course, he played a lot last year with Anthony Walker's role. But I think, this could be one of the biggest potential breakouts out of all the players I said. He has big shoes to fill. He's not the best replacement for Anthony Walker Jr. Like I said, Anthony Walker is a good tackler. He does pretty good out there. But there's some things that Anthony Walker does that couldn't do that Bobby Okereke could do. So I definitely have potential in him. Like I said, as usually, he's one of the fastest linebackers in the NFL. He can potentially be a really good secondary piece with Darius Leonard, and he can learn a lot from him as well throughout the year. It's going to be battle tested this season, so the potential for him is definitely hitting the sky. So I definitely have nothing but faith for Bobby Okereke.
Yeah, he's going to get that increased role this year. Like you said, with Anthony Walker leaving, who was the captain in the middle of the field, Okereke, was taking a lot of his snaps, and now he's going to get even more of them due to the fact that him and Darius Leonard are really the only linebackers on this roster with any real NFL game experience at that position. And like you said, over the last 2 years, he was doing well at what he was doing, but I felt that last season he could have made that leap a little bit more in everything, in tackling and spacing and being able to play in coverage. We know he's able to do that stuff, and we was able to cover a lot better than Anthony Walker was, but I feel like there's more untapped potential, like you said, in Bobby Okereke, and I hope that he's taking notes out of Darius Leonard, who said, I have to be more of the captain, I have to be the more vocal guy and be the one that's mentally thinking about things that normally Anthony Walker was doing. Hopefully he takes a note out of his book and says, people are doubting me. I don't know what it is about the linebackers over this offseason that the national media has been talking about so much. I don't know why, but we've all seen, the disrespect towards Darius Leonard, and then them saying that the Colts have or PFF said that they had the 5th best linebacker room. I don't know how the hell the Broncos got up there. Maybe they included Bradley Chubb, even though we both know that Bradley Chubb's not a linebacker. But nevertheless, I think Darius Leonard actually has just as many sacks as Bradley Chubb does, and he actually plays the real position of a linebacker. But anyway, it's just the level of disrespect, man. It's your time. We believe in you. Pat McAfee called you the future Hall of Famer, man. You got to live up to that, So a lot of pressure on Bobby Okereke for sure. All right, last one. Number 6, who's the last one you think is going to have a breakout year?
Well, you mentioned him already, but, I'm a Rocky Sin stan, so Rocky Sin is my last pick. Definitely has some ups and downs, but I think most Colts fans look at the negatives more than the positives, which can definitely can definitely disappear in certain people's games when you have so many mistakes. I always say this, that Packers game was very pivotal, and it showed you the flash potentials. At the beginning of the game, you get smoked by Devontae Adams on the first play.
Yeah.
At the third quarter going into the fourth, he picks off Aaron Rodgers. Nobody expected that. It was a very good coverage play, but he's shown you the potential he can do. All he has to do is stay disciplined. Kenny Moore this offseason pretty much motivated and said basically that he's been working on this game. He knows what's at stake and what's at risk, so he has to battle for his position. I think he has what it takes to secure the spot and have a way better season than he did last year.
Well, and it's nice that, you're keeping TJ Carey, Xavier Rhodes, and those guys around. Last season, they came in. They really could only do so much to help Rocky Sin in the offseason because they weren't really able to meet up a whole lot to do stuff. But now with the OTAs and the practices and training camp being back to normal, then it'll be so much more easier for them to be able to help Rock Ya-Sin further along the way. And like you said, I think all of it's just really discipline. I think we know Rock Ya-Sin can be a good corner. He just needs to be disciplined and not deal with penalties. So I agree with that. And I'm going to stick with the defensive side here, but this will be a defensive lineman, and that's going to be Kemoko Turay. We all remember 2019, first 4 games of the season. This guy was rocking and then got hurt in the Kansas City game. And, hasn't really been the same since. That ankle injury was nagging him for over a year, and even going into last season when it was at the end of the season, he still wasn't 100% healthy. You could tell he really just wasn't himself because he really wasn't getting the pressure that we know he can. I think this year, being healthy, having this off season to get healthy and practice a little more, and knowing his positions at stake with Kwity Paye and Dayo Adangbo being drafted, I think he's going to want to try to show that even though Adangbo might potentially take his spot later on, that Kemoko Turay can still be a very effective defensive end for this group and will still have that roster spot reserved for him because, having that kind of offensive rush specialist. And, Cody and I mentioned this before as who we think could be the defensive line of the future for obvious pass situations. Let me throw this one at you. Kwity Paye, DeForest Buckner, Dayo Adangbo on the inside with Buckner, and then Kemoko Turay, a fully healthy Kemoko Turay on the other side. How does that defensive line sound?
That sounds really good, man. From the regular perspective, you said the future. So for future's sakes, Kwity Paye is already improving for what he's going to be next year. Nobody knows how good he's going to be in his rookie season, but for the future's sakes, he's going to know a few things he hasn't known when he was a rookie. You look at a guy like Dayo, big guy, wingspan, can pretty much swat down footballs in the middle of the field, which is really good and it helps sakes for low, short passes. DeForest Buckner can't be stopped going towards the middle. So, and then you have Turay on the opposite side. The main thing is, who are you going to double team? And I think that is just the great mindset of these draft picks and these acquisitions that we have for the D-line is that we're going to get pressure and it's going to happen very soon. So you're going to have to figure out who you're going to double team or who you're going to let up. And if you don't have a good O-line, you're in trouble pretty much. So I'm excited for the future.
Yeah, any team this year that does not have a good offensive line towards the end of the year, oh my gosh, you all are going to be in such a world of hurt. I can't wait. But thank you guys so much for tuning into this one. Let us know what you guys think about these breakout candidates. Is there someone that we missed that you think should be added to this list? For Culture Shock, thank you so much for tuning in. And as always, guys, go Colts.